Hi BookTube, my name is Juan, I am just one reader, and today I will be doing something that I've never done before, but I've always wanted to do. I've wanted to do this video for the longest time on this channel. Today, finally, I will be talking about my favorite book of all time, which is, something that I should have done probably years ago, but for some reason, I've waited a long time, but now, here I am, talking about The Never-Ending Story by Ende. Now, in this video, I will not really do a full in-depth review. I think there might be one of those kinds of videos coming up, but I want to really gather my thoughts in a coherent, clever, deep enough way to really prepare for that. So for today, I just want to focus on convincing you, persuading you, compelling you to pick up the best book that's ever been written, because that's what this is. I am legitimately 100% convinced that The Never-Ending Story by Ende is the best book that's ever been written and that ever will be written. So this is just a glowing recommendation on all fronts. This is the best book that has ever been written, in my opinion, in my humble, subjective opinion. Take it or leave it. You know me, you know my taste, you know what kind of reader I am, you know the kinds of things that I value in reading, in the experience of reading, and in books. So mainly that's what I will talk about briefly in this video. What are the features that I have found in The Never-Ending Story over the years of rereading it? That's another thing that I want to talk about, my history reading this book over several years of my life, and why I find that this book really is the best damned thing ever written, in all genres, really. So, first, let me address the big, horrible, giant elephant in the room. The movie of The Never-Ending Story. I did not watch The Never-Ending Story film adaptation when I was a child like everybody else did. That's like a movie that everybody of my generation, or even a generation older than me, or, a few years older than me, they saw that movie when they were children, when they were young, and they really love it for some reason that I do not comprehend. I did not watch the movie until I had already read the book many, many, many times, and it already was my favorite novel of all time. Naturally, you can imagine that when I watched the film adaptation, I wanted to destroy my TV. I wanted to tear out my eyes, and I wanted to just erase the experience that had just happened. The movie, The Never-Ending Story, might have a particular je ne sais quoi, a charm to it. It has a very particular kind of aesthetic, I guess. And I guess some of the elements from the actual source material, the novel, are kind of somewhat present. At least the bare bones of the story are present in the movie. Now, that being said, the movie is what I would describe as a sin to humanity. It is a hot mess, not in a good way, not like, for example, Angels and Demons, which I have right here. All of Dan Brown's work, both the actual books and the movie adaptations of them, they are messy. They are hot messes, but they are very fun and entertaining, and you can dislike them, but they are pretty good in what they are trying to be, you know what I mean? So you can see them as a hot mess, but they have some kind of redeeming value, at least in my eyes. Now, The Never-Ending Story, no, that's not the case with that awful, atrocious, preposterous film adaptation. It's nothing like the book. Like I said, it sort of has the bare bones of the story, but people who grew up watching the Neverending Story, the film adaptation, and they loved it, I guess I cannot really fault them or judge them, although honestly I do judge them. I mean, how can you like that horrible thing? But okay. The only explanation for me is that they haven't read the book. So this is why I am here. This is why you are blessed to have me here in front of you on your screen, telling you that you should forget about the film adaptation. Even if you really love it, you should just put that in a trash, in a garbage can. Just put it in a separate box in your brain, and let's talk about the real thing. The Neverending Story by Michael Ende is, in my opinion, the pinnacle, the absolute highest high of fantasy literature. And I have read my fair share of fantasy. Now, I like to read a certain kind of fantasy. I don't like all of fantasy. Fantasy is a very big genre, but I do like reading fantasy, and I've read my fair share of fantasy, and there are some stinkers out there, some horrible books, very tacky books that I don't connect to. I don't like the writing styles. I don't like what they're trying to do. But this is, I think, from all of the fantasy books that I've read, this is the best one, and here's why. This story it really takes fantasy, the elements of the fantasy genre, to the highest heights of imagination. It really captures the imagination. It does some things to your mind that are not possible, or that you didn't feel would be possible, in terms of stretching the limits of your imagination. That's the first thing I would say. This book is very, very imaginative. I mean, that's something that in fantasy we sort of take for granted. Of course, if it's fantasy, it's going to be very imaginative and creative, but there are some fantasy books that are just very lacking in that regard. And here, this is like the perfect example of how a work of fantasy fiction can really make you see things in your mind that could not have been possible without it. So that's the first thing. Another thing is the storytelling is just beautiful. Another thing is the writing style. It's a very playful, kind of silly, but really profound way of delivering a story in a very compelling, engaging way. It's a story that is very gripping. It's not exactly thrilling, or it's not written like a thriller. It doesn't really have cliffhangers or anything of the sort. This is like a very beautiful, warm, cozy, highly imaginative, highly evocative. That's the word I was looking for. It's a highly evocative fantasy, and it really stretches your imagination like a muscle. Something else that I love is, it's a story that everyone can enjoy. And, talking about my history with this book, the first time I read this book, my favorite book, I must have been 9 or 10 years old. And I used to reread this book pretty consistently, like every year, or sometimes twice a year. So I was very, very familiar with the story, and I would still come back to it because there's something in here that transcends what reading is, or what reading can be. You know what I mean? It's not a book that you read for the story, although the story is absolutely amazing. It's not a story that you read because of the characters, although the characters are absolutely great. It's a story that you come back to time and time again, or at least I have come back to it time and time again, and this is just my experience. It might be different for you, but for me, I have kept coming back to it because of the experience of reading this book, the commentary on life and the human condition and fiction and fantasy, like the human process of fantasizing about things, and creativity and art and dreams and feelings and memory and relationships and free will. Like, there are so many wonderful, deep, profound themes embedded in this story that I think anybody and everybody could benefit from reading this book, and they would feel some sort of connection. You can read this to a child, or you can read this as a child, like I did, and you can still read this as an adult. For quite a few years, I didn't reread this book just because I was busy with some other stuff. But a few weeks ago, I said to myself, I really, really want to go back to this world, and I just want to remember the experience. And so I did. I picked it up, and from the very opening paragraph of the prologue, which is a fantastic prologue, by the way, I was immediately transported, and I was immediately reminded of why this always has been my favorite book, just because of all the roots that it has in me and the roots that I have in it. So that's what I will tell you in terms of why I think this is the best book that's ever been written. It's a story that is like a tree. It's always growing, it's always evolving, it's never complete. It has so many deep things in it. It feels like a mystery, like a mysterious box that always keeps on giving, Something else that I wanted to say is that this book has a very particular quality that I haven't really seen in any other books, or in very few books, and that is a kind of eerie, uncanny mystery. And when I say that, I don't mean like a suspenseful kind of mystery or a thriller-esque kind of mystery, like in the mystery genre. I don't mean that. What I mean is that this book really has a mysterious aura. It has a kind of feeling of awe and of grandeur. It has a wonderful feeling of mysteriousness. You can't quite comprehend many things in this book, and I think that's partly why it's unsettling and beautiful at the same time. And actually, one of the things that make the movie so bad, in my opinion, is that the movie really stripped that mystery or that mysterious quality away from it. It completely took it away and, did something else with the story and with everything in it. Actually, there is a video on YouTube, which, if I remember, I will try to link down below because it's absolutely hilarious. There's a video of Ende himself talking and criticizing, talking about the movie and criticizing it exactly for this reason, that they completely took all of the mysteriousness and the grandeur and the magic away from what he wrote, and they made something completely different. So, yeah. So I've been showing you this edition of the Neverending Story, which is in English. I've never read this book. I've never read this copy. I've always read the Neverending Story in Spanish because it was originally written in German. Ende was a German writer. So I've never read the translation to English, but it's a nice cover. My favorite cover, and the one that I read for the first time, this was my original copy, is this one, which is absolutely gorgeous. This is in Spanish, La Historia Interminable, and it's actually already a little damaged from you know, all the times I've come back to it. But I'm taking the dust jacket away so you can see how beautiful this book is. Just lovely, lovely book. And on the inside, if you have a good copy, the book has to come with certain features. Every chapter starts out with a letter of the alphabet. So there's a prologue, and then chapter number 1 starts with the letter A. And there's an illustration with the letter A, and then the second chapter is letter B, and there's an illustration with a corresponding letter, and so on and so forth. So that's the first like funny feature of this book. The second one is that the book is written in 2 different colors. It's printed in 2 different colors. One of them is like a green blue, and the other one is red. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but here's the green bluish color, and then there's the red color. And I think that's how all of the editions or copies of this book have to be printed, to separate both storylines, because the book follows one storyline, which is the storyline that we are reading, which is about the boy called Bastian. And then the other one, which is the blue-green one, is the storyline that he is reading within the book that he's reading, which then turns out to be the book that we are reading. So it's a work of meta fiction, and what Michael Ende does with that concept, with that meta fiction kind of thing, is absolutely wonderful. So this is one edition. It's my favorite edition, but there are many editions that I have collected. Some of them are very modest and very humble, very simple. Some are a little bit more beautiful, but really, I just want to recommend that you pick this book up in any way, shape, or form, and let me know if you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have watched the movie. What are your thoughts? Have you read the book and watched the movie? What are your thoughts? Are you with me or are you wrong? Because if you're not with me on this one, you are wrong. I'm kidding, of course. The Neverending Story by Michael Ende, my favorite book. Thanks for watching.